I would let them give an introduction of themselves. So yeah, please go ahead. Dan, would you want to go first?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Dan Tabor. I'm in McKinsey & Company. I've been in the tech field for over 25 years. The last 5 focused very heavily on the ed tech space, using analytics to drive independent journeys for our learners. And Jonathan, over to you.
Okay, my name's Jonathan Peters with Sententia, and our focus is on adult learning, and so whether that's corporate learning or higher ed learning. And so I've been in this space since 2016 with the company, but been around education much longer than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Wasif and the rest of the Abhisaf team. This is Muazzam Arslan Bhatti, founder and CEO of Enpose. Primarily, we are engaged in learning outcomes attainment, AI-based adaptive and personalized learning. And I'm also engaged in policy making as well. It's been almost 20 years almost, right?
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for such a nice introduction. So I think with that, we can start off the discussion. And this is the first question that I think I can aim at all of you guys, and you can chip in. So how can gamification enhance students' engagement in the classroom?
I always like to point out that all animals learn through play. That's just natural to all animals. Humans happen to do it a little better. So it strikes me that when we add gamification or game-based learning into a learning environment, then we're working with how we just naturally develop and how we just naturally learn.
Yeah, I kind of could build on that. Many of us have to learn in the flow of work. Well, work is a natural part of most of our lives, so is play. And if you can incorporate learning as part of what we do naturally, then the lessons learned stick and are more rewarding.
Yeah, and I feel sometimes when we make something more formal and kind of mandatory, people feel it like, okay, this is something imposed upon us. When we make it something more fun-oriented, interactive, sometimes learning is a lot easier and more engaging as well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, definitely. And would you say that this strategy of incorporating play or gamification into education, is it something new, or is it something that we've been doing in the past as well?
I'll go. I would say since I've been a kid, and I have kids as well, it works really well. Whether you make something engaging, exciting, your role play, different things. I think it's an age-old way of helping to learn, and just if you get in the enjoyment out of that, you don't really even realize you're learning. You're enjoying yourself as the primary role, and then everything else it's just absorbed. So anyway, that's me.
Definitely. That's what go ahead.
Yeah. Well, what I see is that most of these concepts, they have existed, right? Now, what we see is that now we have added the technology part, right? Yeah. The reward system has always been there, appreciation, verbal, or in some sort of like toys, candies, whatever, right? When I talk about the school level, right? So it has always been there, but now we see that in the more digital format, right? So I guess what we are doing is that we have reshaped it, or we have repackaged this concept. So it was there, the kind of competition when we say the game, like the gaming elements, let's say the points are somehow making it more competitive among your peers. It was there, but now it's more profound. I know the access is a lot easier, it's more structured as well.
And one of the things I like to point out, and this goes more to why we need to be paying attention to gamification, especially in higher ed and in the workplace, is because classrooms now look very different from classrooms when I was a kid, when I was a child. We couldn't talk. We couldn't speak. We had to be silent for hours on end. Everything was in a nice row. Had to sit and not fidget. And you only had 20 minutes of play or 30 minutes of play a day. And now classrooms are much open, a lot more movement going around, and so on. So while it might have been around for quite a while, classrooms have certainly changed over the last probably 20 years, if not sooner, 10 years.
Definitely. And that sometimes, make us think that it is possible now to have personalized learning as well due to, smart technologies and systems that, we are building today. In that regard, what do you guys think about gamification and, how it can respond to a personalized learning for a student, for an individual? What are your thoughts on that?
I've not really experienced personalized games, but the personalized learning journey incentivized by gamification, by leaderboards, by competition definitely helps, because you can score, you can perform the way that you perform. There is that accountability to a leaderboard or a team that would help incentivize you to do better. But what I've seen effective in terms of gamification is allowing that learner to pick the game. Like they might like a certain type of game or whatever it is. Some actually prefer to skip games and just go right to the learning piece, but either way, the outcome is allowing that individual to tailor their journey a little bit and find some joy in that, all while trying to, I guess, compete on a leaderboard. That's what I've seen.
And I think that's really, if we look to the future of with gamification and all of these elements, in my opinion, we're going to expect more and more individualized experiences in general in our lives as technology comes along and starts creating that for us, so that the idea that we would all have the same exact experience in a classroom will become less popular. And the ideas will be that we will be seeking individual experiences that are tailored or customized to us as individuals, as consumers. So I really think that's where we're headed, is toward the personalization of learning, more so than we are now. I'm not saying it's not available now, but I think it'll actually be demanded as we move into the future.
Yeah, was it something like this word personalized learning is something very close to my heart, because this is something we are working as well. Again, this concept is like, it's not new, right? If we recall the education system, the learning process, let's say 100 years ago, it used to be more like personalized learning, because on the other side, there was the class size was very small, and sometimes there would be one-on-one learning as well. So an experienced instructor, he or she was in a position to know the weakness and the strengths of the student, right? And they would be able to adjust the content and the speed as well, even the style as well, because they could read, because there was a few individuals, students only in front of them. But with the passage of time, when the class size grew, it was not possible for the course instructor, right, to know strengths and the weakness of each individual student. Now, with the advancement in the technology, especially when we have these AI and sort of like technologies, now it has become a lot more possible. Now we have more avenues in terms of understanding the learning style of individuals, right, students, and the way they respond to different kind of learning styles, right? And then we can adjust the content, the pace, and of course, different sort of elements as well. So I guess, especially with the generative AI, right, I guess this is going to be definitely a lot more in place, the gamification in the learning process, right?
Yes, definitely. I think that's really true. And then, it also, sometimes makes us think that this seems like, a really big paradigm shift or a really big change for the stakeholders involved. And one of those stakeholders are educational institutes. Do you guys think they are ready for such a change, or is there some sort of, I already see Jonathan, nodding his head. So why don't you take this up first, Jonathan?
It's in higher ed, there's the cultural changes take time. It just because of the entrenchment of culture. Having said that, when we've seen big changes and amazing changes, but they tend to be individual. I can think of one professor at Brown University, but the battle that he had to fight. This is pre-COVID. After COVID, then suddenly everybody said, "Hey, this is kind of cool," when students can't come to the classroom anymore. But the culture just in higher ed just takes time for more established. It's not to say that new institutions aren't popping up and doing things differently, but the tried and true that have been around for generations, they're going to move slowly. So.
I mean, I think no one's ready for change, but I do believe higher education, especially university, have no choice but to adapt. The whole point about generative AI, I saw a news article, a study that was done at Harvard, and these professors had content that was assignments that were submitted, and they were evaluating whether they were Gen AI or not, like after the fact, and they were pretty good at picking up on it, but they chose to allow it and figure out ways in which they can evolve how they interact with students. So instead of sitting home and writing papers, you're in class, you're applying things. There's just different methods in which they would change and adapt to that. So I think on the student side, it definitely adds a value. Do those instructors, professors need to change? Yes, but it can actually be an assistant, not a hindrance. I think there's a way that it was mentioned before about Gen AI. It could be an individual tutor for that student along when that instructor is not there, and as well as complement it. Now, I am very curious to see if those two worlds were gamification and AI kind of combined to even further enhance that individual journey. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I guess it's a very hard topic. The trend is there now, the post-COVID world, right? Obviously, digitalization itself, and especially engagement with the devices in the learning process, now it's a lot more accepted across the globe, right? That okay, this is a very productive means of way of learning as well, because when we talk about gamification, directly we are adding the concept that again the screen time type of stuff, right? So the old school, right? There are a lot of people who still believe that direct interaction with the human, like the professor or the peer itself, that is something still important, very important. So they, when I talk with a lot of professors, my experience has been they want this in place. They want to use gamification, but perhaps we need more data. We need more research in terms of the effectiveness of this process as well, that how effective this has been and whether there has been some the negative impact on the students or not, right? Because secondly, I guess the task itself is very complex, like to devise such a process which is inclusive, right? And that targets the desired outcomes as well. I mean, this is something, the tricky part, right? That this is something that I said, right? With the passage of time, with AI and generative AI, I guess the process will be facilitated, and the adoption will be a lot more easier.
Definitely can be. And yes, I agree with Jonathan that sometimes educational institutes or academia, they do require time to respond to any policy or any change or any infrastructural restructuring. But do we see any, success stories these days that, hey, any education institutes that you would you guys would want to share? Okay, hey, this is, a good example which is happening right now, and maybe, we can learn a few things here and scale them up.
Well, I mentioned his name's Professor Jim Egan at Brown, and so I've seen two of his literary critics. He's in the English department, English literature department, and I've seen two of his very immersive literary criticism courses, and of course the students like them. It's been interesting to see the outcomes. Who's taking these courses? I think one of the but he went at it. He was very diligent in pursuing this. His words to us, he said, "We've been teaching the same way for 30 years." This is what he said to us. He said, "Our students deserve better," and that was what drove him. But what I love about it, one of the mechanics that he uses is he has an avatar that represents him, and in the discussion area, that avatar stays in character. He stays in character. That's a very weird character. The avatar likes weird juices, like carrot juice and and stuff. And so when he's in the discussion boards, he stays in character. And I don't know too many stodgy professors that would do that. That would essentially make fun of themselves.
I mean, it sounds really fun, like going into a class where your professor is role playing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, essentially.
I would love to.
Yeah, his avatar looks nothing like him too, which is interesting. So.
Okay, and if I sort of read out this this aspect about about change and seeing what's happening, then I wanted to point out this towards you to start off with. What about the corporate learning? We're talking about academia and higher education. What sort of things in terms of gamification is happening, and what sort of change is happening in corporate learning?
So it's a little bit broader than just, I guess, a basic gamification. The role of simulations has played a really big role in terms of corporations. So as Jonathan was describing that scenario where the professor had an avatar, I've seen good success with some vendors that are out there. I won't name them because I don't want to be biased to anyone, but where they use avatars through these simulations. And what they've proven is that in terms of giving feedback to colleagues or just tough situations, people tend to be more open to these virtual avatars than they are human to human sometimes. It allows the sort of the actor or the voice actor or whatever that's behind the avatar to deliver the message and that feedback. And what's been seen is a much greater propensity to just being open and flow in that conversation than if it was just a human, like an HR person, something like that. So that's one example. Another is even beyond that in corporate America, where simulations that set up an environment that are not scripted or not linear, but allow someone to walk through in a three-dimensional perspective, interact with structures, with other avatars, things like that, to test and making sure that they understand their role. So it's really about reinforcement, and it's about skill building in this virtual environment. So it's a simulation. There's a little bit of a game factor to it as well. If you're scoring points, how did you do? Did you not do? All of that really contributes to, I guess, the confidence that you're completing it correctly or answering it the right way, even though there is no specific set path. So that seems to be working very well. And then the last example that I would say is in terms around reinforcement. I think gamification is showing very effective as a way of the carrot to bring people back. So if you have to complete a task multiple days to really build that skill, to really test your knowledge on something, the games are a way of making it fun. A very short game is a way, as that carrot, if you will, to bring people back day after day to do a little task, to then slowly build that skill and be able to reinforce the things that they've learned.
Yeah. Same thing. Same question to you, Muazzam. What is your experience, and especially as a founder, a tech founder, would you want to add something to that?
Yeah. as far as gamification at school level is concerned, most of its use has been around solving maths problem or STEM related assignments, STEM related learning. I guess the I would say the overall this is the result has been very positive in general, because kids in general, they have issues like engagement and their interactivity. Uh, if it is a game kind of stuff, the learning is gamified, they feel more engaged and they feel more motivated because it involves them, right? This has been the primary reason that like they find themselves more immersive, that while they are playing a game, right, and they are solving the maths problem, right? So and also, right, sometime like Dan said, the simulation at a college level, it has been used for the simulations as well, right? Uh, and in higher education, of course, for this again, STEM related as well, and also the simulations, the business games, right? So at different levels, they had been uh, good results observed, right? But of course, again, I would say that the widespread application of the gamification process across the subjects and different areas, that would need a little more time. So far, it's limited to a few areas.
Okay, definitely, definitely. And yes, and if we sort of look at either K-12 or even adult education or corporate education, the aspect of culture is also maybe something important. And do you guys think that cultural considerations are something that to be that one should keep in mind while designing such systems and such processes in a gamified learning environment?
Yeah, I just reviewed yesterday a game that it's as far it uses some interesting mechanics, but it's basically a card game where you get different cards and are responding. But the main thrust of the game mechanic was of taking turns. And so people would tell it's their turn, and then here's the story that they'll be telling. It depends on the situation that they're playing. And the whole issue and the whole point is to get people to share inside that environment what different aspects for them, what's important. So with the diversity and inclusion, so how did they feel about the situation? And so just the mechanic of turn taking allows each person then to share their perspective, their story, and then the other people, the way the game is played is then people respond to it, to their story. But so using social learning and like I said, just the basic of taking turns, so everybody gets a voice, everybody gets to share. That was very encouraged by it, and I look forward to seeing the results that they get as they launch this new game into the corporate area.
Yeah, yeah. I will have a similar comment. Absolutely, adaptation is needed, because you see, when it comes to engagement and recognition, obviously each culture, society, and setup, they have different perception about the same thing, right? So whatever we are using during the gamification or the design process, be it the content, the symbols, whatever we are using, if we want to use it in a different setup, right, obviously we have to consider how the student in that environment will perceive it, whether they recognize it or not. Sometimes it may not be appropriate in that setup, right? So this is something, while we are designing something, absolutely we have to take care of it, right? So that to make it more effective and of course applicable as well.
Yes, yes. Would you want to add something, Dan, about cultural aspects of gamification? And
I think these gentlemen covered it well. It's about adapting, and I think I'll just reiterate what Jonathan was saying is allowing everyone to contribute really lowers that barrier. They feel heard and they're going to contribute. And I think it fosters a much better environment, regardless of culture. Just being allowing people to speak and be part of that is key.
Yes. Okay. And guys, as the name says, gamification, so one can expect a lot of fun and play while experiencing such systems. But we also sometimes tend to think that how can gamification could be integrated into subjects beyond traditional fun topics? Because yeah. Muazzam, would you want to?
Yeah.
I think he's the one to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, that is on top of the wish list, right? Absolutely. But of course, it's a very hard task, right? Especially, let's say you want to integrate into history, and you want to make students learn that, okay, probably we can design something they can place events in an order, so they get to know what happened at what level, or maybe they can do role playing as well in different games, right? So yes, there is a good room, right, for different subjects, but again, it will require more research first in terms of designing, then applying it, then collecting the data, and of course, then looking at the analytics, that how students have been performing, and then we have to look at the assessment ways, that whether it was effective or not, right? Okay, so that will be a little research process. After that, we should be in better position. Okay, this is what we did in that environment. Okay, now we have a good example to incorporate in the history subject, or then let's say we go to some other, let's say, community learning. That is something we can, because you see, when it comes to learning, we have cognitive type of learning, we have psychomotive type of learning, we have behavioral learning as well. So the idea is that, so what exactly we want to target? We want to build the concepts, or we want to affect the behaviors of the students. So based on our desired type of outcomes and the learning type, then accordingly we can pick and choose, okay, in this subject, this is kind of behavior. But like I said, that community learning, over there, we can create gamified characters, right? Students would talk with them, and then they would respond to them and see how empathetic student feels about a certain incident happening around their community. So absolutely, we definitely can use it, right?
Yeah, I would just kind of add to that. I mean, just thinking in real world, you can make a game out of anything. You can make something, try to make something entertaining, but we all have this level of, is that really worth doing? Like, not everything is a game. Like, think about your favorite movies. The best ones really have good story, good character. There's been a lot of time spent in building that narrative, that story that makes you emote in some way and react to it. If it's just noise and sound, it doesn't really engage you. And humans can tell that right away. So I think what was really said is just really based on the type of learning you have, there needs to be serious investment into gamification if the game is your method for learning. If it's just a token to get you to keep coming back or busy work, it's probably not as effective either. And I think analytics is a critical piece of all that, because it's about the outcome. It's not just to entertain or to fill time. It's really about making sure that that's keeping them coming back and they're engaging the right way, so there is an effective outcome of the money spent to build it, and the time spent by the person.
Yes, definitely.
So yeah, to respond to that, I think just when Dan said, and I think where gamification fails a lot of times when people with what we call cosmetic gamification, where someone just throws a bunch of stuff and expects it to be fun, like here's some badges or something. There's not the dedication to say, here's what we're wanting, here's the results, here's the journey that the learner is going on. And so the reason it doesn't work is because not everybody, but when people are just tossing things that, hey, our LMS has a point system, let's use it. That's where I shouldn't say fail, that's a little strong, but it doesn't get the results that it could have when it's just sitting at a cosmetic level instead of how can we build this build it in so it's all one experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And am I right to say that, like maybe the back end of gamification is not as fun as at the front
Yeah,
end?
yeah, exactly. The grind.
That depends how many pizzas you have over there while you are designing something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. The grind of the spreadsheets. Yeah.
Definitely. So I was saying, is on top of your head, or one thing that comes to your mind when I ask, what are the key challenges or key problems when when we talk about implementation of gamification in learning environments, either for corporate or for adult education?
Anything for me, it's in the broader corporate environment, the stage of learning, it's acquire, apply, and sustain. Where would gamification best be applied and most effective? I think in certain organizations, the long tail, the sustain, gamification seems to play a pretty good role in terms of bringing people back. But it's not always effective in ensuring that skills are developed and measured correctly. So that I think that challenge it hasn't been solved. It's one thing to continue the engagement after perhaps an instructor or the core learning is done, but how do you then measure their achievement, their progress, and is gamification a way in which you can do that? I feel like that's something that I've not seen solved yet.
Yeah, I would, when you, well, let's put it towards, you see the longevity of World of Warcraft or Fortnite or something, like whatever, when we think of learning over long periods of time, I think that would take some thought, some diligence on the designer side, on the developer side, to say how can we create this journey so that it's not like here's traditional learning and then instead of a quiz or something we have a Jeopardy game or something. Then that starts to lose its interest relatively quickly, versus looking at these games that have, like I said, that have that longevity of keeping people involved, and thinking about, can we bring that into an environment where learning is happening over a long length of time. For a quick little webinar or something, it's easy to have a fun little one-off gamification thing, but to have sustained learning, sustained engagement.
Is that in terms of biggest challenges will be to design something which is applicable at the global scale first. I mean, you design something which targets a bigger audience, right? And that is more inclusive as well, because you see, there are different the students, let's say even the corporate learning as well. People respond to same learning stuff in a different way. So designing something which is effective for a wider audience, right? That itself is a challenge. And that's going to take some time, right? That how we come up with something that is adaptable to, like you said, there's a cultural element as well. There is a different proficiency of digital literacy as well. Then technology itself in some places, right? The technology adoption is not that much, right? Sometimes technology infrastructure itself is not available. So this is what I say, that while you're designing something, you have to see that in the target environment, what do we have available in terms of existing infrastructure, in terms of overall how do they feel about the gamification itself, right? If they are new to this process, obviously, like Jonathan said, that of course there will be some time they would accept it. Okay, it's an effective way. So this is what I say, that in a small setting, it's a lot easier. But if you want to make it an essential part of the learning process, that is gonna take a little time.
Definitely. And yes, gents, if you want, so we can have an open discussion for 5 minutes. I can leave the floor to you guys, and if you want to ask each other any questions, so we can do that.
Well, I'll throw something out there. I think that the concept of generative AI in education is pretty new. I think any of us that have been, not hiding under a rock have seen the impact. It's a little scary for some. It's really exciting for others. My background is in marketing tech and ad tech, and I think it's a pretty proven system where different multi-channel, omni-channel experiences, search, voice, web, mobile, you can pick up feedback from shoppers, commerce, and find out what their interests are, and put the right product at the right time at the right price in front of them, and really shorten that conversion life cycle, that model of thing. When I joined the firm, coming from that space, it was very intriguing for me that how does the ed tech space achieve the same thing? What are those feedbacks? What are those symptoms, or not symptoms, but those actions that tell you that learner is now moving to that next level? And quite frankly, everything can be very prescriptive, simulations, all that, but they're well defined. But what's got me so excited, especially of late, is Gen AI. I think that generative content as a learning tutor, a learning assistant for that individual learning, of where they are on that journey, I think is really exciting, because that may actually be able to transform that missing piece, that learning model, that is not a conversion engine, but like a learning engine. Like, what is that? And I think it really ends up coming back to how frequently do you know the learner? Are you asking the right questions? Are you adapting the content? Are you meeting them where they are, incentivizing or exciting them to take that next step? Or if they're bored, then that's fine, but adapt to that. And I think that's almost the secret sauce that's been missing in ed tech for a while, and I'm particularly excited about that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm speaking at a conference, a learning conference next in September, and foolishly 9 months ago, the whole thing was the future of gamification, and that was obviously before all this just blew up. And when I submitted the proposal to speak at it, and so first of all, because I was like, I don't know, 3 months ago, I was like, man, I really don't want to talk about ChatGPT at this conference because everybody's talking about it. But it has to be, it goes back to what my thought process is, getting that individualized experience and Dan was talking about that. I think that's where the power of it's going to come in as we develop the technology to make that easier and more possible for more and more people, designers, to be able to use it.
Yeah, something that I would like to share. While being an EdTech founder, that I support, we have to use technology to aid the learning process. But at the same time, I want to support the little sentiments of the academic plan as well, right? So we must use technology in a very measured way. That because what I see is that with the increased screen time, people are not talking with the people, right? Let's take the case of higher education, right? So if we want to develop the real skills in students, critical skills, people management, behaviors, other analytic skills, absolutely okay. We are going to use it, the gamification process, but at the same time, sometime the student itself may absorb more in the game, but may not be interested, may lost the context of the learning itself, right? So that's a fine balance, which I see we will have to maintain. That okay, at what level we want to introduce this gamification, and at another level, okay, no, we need to engage students in the real time, not with a screen, not with an app, rather we have to engage with the human, right? So this is something very important, that at the expense of engagement with the digital devices, we must not lose focus, right? That, okay, that is something that is an aid, but it's not the whole itself when it comes to the learning. It's a little tricky, but that's what I see. That's why I said that while I come from the tech background, I would still say that we'll have to very carefully measure that where we have to introduce this gamification, where we do not have to introduce.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, muted.
Masif, I guess you are muted, right?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry
Yeah.
about that.
Okay.
Yeah. With that, I have to thank all three of you for joining us today. And this was really insightful for me as well, and I hope for the audience until this it would be as well. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us today, and we would definitely catch up with you in upcoming sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Masif and team. Thank you, Dan and Jonathan as well. Right.
You.
Let's interact with you guys. Right. We'll stay in touch.
Yeah,
Have a great day. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Could meet virtually. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Take care, everyone.
And best of luck for your research paper, Jonathan.
Hmm?
For the conference, best of luck.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks.
Yeah, looking forward. Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Muazzam.
Thank you.
Jonathan.
Thanks everyone from Microsoft. Appreciate it.
Thank you.